For anyone who studies psychology, this talk is going to be about courageous recruiting. Given the the period of history that we're in, I think this is a pretty apropos topic, and several of the speakers today have already brought up things like courage and resiliency and things of that nature. I want to go into it into a little more in depth and go into an area that we typically do not consider in our profession. Now, I chose this slide because if anyone who studies psychology, you're probably aware of the visual cliff experiments. And in this, we have this cute little baby. No, it's not me, Dan, about ready to go off a table. And there's this big gap. I believe from the experiment, it was about 3 or 4 feet, and it's covered with a glass. So if the little bambino wanted to, little bugger could walk across. He's uncertain. He's afraid, and he has yet to develop a sense of courage. So that's the impetus for all this one. What I'd like to do first is actually give this talk in memory and honor of our friend Ed Hahn, who passed 2 weeks ago. Ed was 50 years young. He had been battling cancer. Ed was an unrepentant uh, supporter of both talent acquisition and job seeker communities. And when it comes to courage, I can't think of a better person at the top of the heap than Ed. So here's the essence of what courage is, and this Vincent van Gogh quote really does it for me. If you hear a voice within and you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. Easier said than done. So let me ask 4 questions of everybody here. And as I asked Dan, I want Dan to read out things that come in the chat because I want to be able to address them as they come by. So let me ask you, do you confront fear when you're faced with fear? Gandhi said, never apologize for being correct or for being years ahead of your time. If you're right and you know it, speak your mind, even if you're a minority of one. The truth is still the truth. So do you speak your mind? Think of debriefs. When a manager says, I just don't think their culture fit. What do? You go, oh, okay. Or do you say, okay, manager, what question did you ask? And what was the person's response that led you to that conclusion? Oh, you didn't ask a question. Uh-uh. We have some work to do. It's impossible, said pride. It's risky, said experience. It's pointless, said reason. Give it a try, whispered the heart. Do you take chances? Do you take chances as a TA professional? Striving for excellence motivates you. Striving for perfection is demoralizing. If there's one book that I can wholeheartedly recommend, it's by Harriet Breaker, The Disease to Please, Curing the People Pleasing Syndrome. We've heard that. Several people have mentioned perfectionism is debilitating. And as one of my favorite authors, Hugh Prater, wrote in a book called Notes on Love and Courage, perfectionism is slow death. So Aristotle, a great quote by Aristotle, we're what we repeatedly do. Excellent then is not an act, but a habit. So do you strive for excellence in what you do? Don't strive for perfection, strive for excellence. Because you strive for excellence, that means you're going to fail. And we're going to talk about failing forward a little bit in a little while. So courage then is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. So, let's ponder this just for a second. And I'm trying to get to the right slide here. Um, we have a problem in TA. And if you consider what's been happening since 2023 or so, I think it's something on the order of 65,000 or more recruiters have been riffed. And we often have adopt a police or may have another mentality. But, I want to talk about now is what we can do to ensure that how to be in talent acquisition and not to be a human doormat. That's the last thing that I'm going to let happen to me or the people that work for me is have other people who are ignorant of what we have to go through step on us with no repercussions. So courage then is the steadfast commitment to act with integrity and conviction, even in the face of uncertainty or resistance. It means advocating for DEIB, challenging the status quo to ensure equitable hiring practices, and championing bold decisions that align with long-term vision, even when they may be unpopular or risky. Courage is about being a trusted advisor. We've heard this. Goldberg said this. Others have said this. Pushing leaders to make decisions based on values and potential rather than convenience or bias. So this led me a couple of years back to, ponder this whole concept of courage. And, so we talk about tools regularly, we talk about processes, we talk about systems, we talk about analytics. Why are we so afraid to talk about courage? Because in order to talk about courage, we have to talk about fear. And what I want to do now going forward is ask everybody here, and Dan, I mean it, is within TA or within your TA profession, your career, what do you fear? Now, I want to start going off and talking about some of these. But Dan, if people actually type this stuff into the chat, just shout it out.
For sure.
Okay. Because, and I realize it's getting towards the end of the day, and I'm going to try to make my voice crack so I don't sound monotone.
One said
These,
failure,
well, failure is a critical thing, but failure is pretty all encompassing. These are some of the things.
rejection,
How about
boredom,
how about some of these economic downturns, high turnover rates, time to hire pressures, compliance nightmares, losing top talent to competitors, a misaligned EVP, the fear of giving feedback and being yelled at by HR or legal counsel, finding a new job. We've all been through it. David Marr, one of the early leaders of giving back, you know, and Chrissy, great job also. Every week doing this is, people are so afraid or so fearful of how to find a new job, even when you put in the post, and both of you do this. I'm not the recruiter on this. They people chime and say, I'm interested. Please help me. That's real. So, so what can we do about it? I mean, in order to do something about it, and delve into what it takes to be courageous, we need to talk about some principles of courage. And this is not the essence of what I'm going to be talking about down the line, but I want this to be a rubric, a framework that you can back into and look inward to yourself. So the principles of courage are, the clarity of destination. Are you clear about what you want, where you want to be, and who you want to be? Origin of inspiration. What inspires you? What excites you? What keeps you focused? Unrealized potential. What is your unrealized potential? That quiet voice that says, man, if only I had this, I could do this. If only someone did this for me, I could go there. What is that unrealized potential? Don't keep it inside of you. You need to let it go out there. Responsibility. It goes back to, I think it was a Dr. Seuss, and Pete may want to correct me on this because he's old enough. I meant what I said, and I said what I meant, an elephant faithful 100%. Our responsibility to ourselves, to the people we covet, to our companies, to our managers. If you say it, mean it. Awareness. What do you think about when your progress is impeded? What do you do? Do you just bang your head? Just do some more. Let's send out some more in malls. Boom, boom, boom. You know, if you're stuck, what do you do? Gratitude. Bringing gratitude into your life leaves very little room for anything negative. So how are you practicing gratitude at work? How are you practicing gratitude at home? All this creates a sense of power in you. And finally, excellence. Excellence is the one habit that you never, ever want to break. So far, so good. Dan, any thumbs up in the old chatteroo? No. Okay, fine. Next. Now we're going to get some nitty gritty stuff. What are the elements of courage? And there are 20 here. I'm not going to cover 20. So there are going to be elements of courage and then examples of courage that leverage all these courage is things. So courage is comprised of these elements: the courage to innovate, embracing new technologies, methodologies, and unconventional strategies to improve processes, even when outcomes are uncertain. The courage to advocate, one of my big ones. Speaking up for candidates, employers, employees, or underrepresented groups, ensuring their voices are heard when decisions are made. The courage to decide, making difficult hiring decisions quickly and decisively, even when faced with incomplete information or competing priorities. The courage to challenge, another really important one for me. I'm a pain in the ass. I don't like being bullied. So I'm going to challenge someone who is galactically stupid or galactically insensitive, questioning the status quo or traditional practices that no longer serve the unit or its people. The courage to empathize, placing oneself in the shoes of others to understand their needs and concerns, even when it requires vulnerability or difficult conversations. Our job is not easy. When you think about the definition of a recruiter, I think years ago I put this on a slide of some presentation. Here's a definition of a recruiter, the best one I've ever heard. No, 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 maybe, no, no. Referral from bosses, maids, caretaker, no. Yes. There's a lot of negativity. And so we're dealing with saying no a lot. How we can empathize with people is critical to our development as a TA professional. The courage to adapt, to remain flexible and open to change in the face of evolving markets, technologies, and workforce dynamics. The courage to lead, the courage to communicate, the courage to stay ethical. Man, this is a big one these days. Upholding integrity and fairness in all TA processes, even when pressured to take shortcuts or make compromises. I will not compromise excellence. I will not compromise a single person leaving an interview process and not receiving the same treatment as the very best person in that process. You treat people fairly, you stay ethical, you're a professional. The oh god, big one. The courage to advocate for self, prioritizing your professional growth, your boundaries and well-being to perform optimally and sustainably, even in the most trying times. This goes to don't be a doormat. If you know you don't say yes, 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 if that voice inside of you is saying no because being able to advocate for yourself is something that it does come eventually, but early in I'm a girl dad. I got a 25-year-old. Trying to get her to advocate for herself and not clam up. It's a challenge. That's what you have to do as a professional. Collaborate, the courage to measure, um, the courage to advocate for diversity. If ever there was a war that I'm just so sad that we're fighting, it's this war against DEIB and the war against ESG. Um, it's our job to pursue inclusive hiring practices, even when challenging new opinions and entrenched norms. We're going to be moving into a political period where diversity hiring is going to be challenged more and more every month. What are we going to do as TA professionals when we know it's wrong? What are you going to do when you know it's wrong? The courage to fail forward. That's part of excellence. If you're pushing your boundaries and you're trying to be excellent, you're going to fail. But, accepting mistakes, these mistakes are part of the growth that we all go through. You don't see all the skin knees and bad moves and dumbass decisions I made right now, but I can assure you, I made them in spades. I put my foot in my mouth more times than when one can imagine. But I had this goal. I had this vision of where I wanted to go. I know that, it's a trite adage, but it doesn't matter how many times you fall down. It matters how many times you get up. uh, the courage to celebrate wins. Most of all, the courage to be human, embracing authenticity and humanity in just everything that we do. Because I mean, a couple of years ago, our dearly departed friend Derek Zeller and I wrote what I consider to be probably the best thing one of the best things I ever wrote. It was an article over on Recruiting Daily. It's called "My Name Is Not Candidate," and you have to realize the people who we interact with are humans just like us. They have fears. They're courageous. They're fearful. They have uh, try a sense of humanity, man. Don't give feedback. Let them know how they can improve. Sometimes just a little pat in the back is all that's needed to create an incredible candidate experience. Keep that in mind. Um, Sorry. So here we now have examples of courage. And with these, I took each of these elements and I wondered, how do they translate into things, into tangible, tactical things? Again, I'm not going to talk about all of them. Everyone here is going to get the deck. In terms of the courage to innovate, implementing an AI-driven recruitment tools to streamline hiring while addressing fairness and bias. What this means is it's the first question that you want to ask when you're implementing some sort of AI or AI-ish platform is the question is how do we ensure that this is bias free or bias minimized? How do we ensure that everybody gets a fair shake? And if they can't provide the answer, don't buy the damn product. Find something else. The courage to advocate, championing a candidate from a non-traditional background despite skepticism from hiring managers. Here's a great one. Recidivism. People make mistakes. People fall down, they get up, they go to jail. Um, if somebody were an absolute kick ass, whatever it is you're looking for, they have, but they've been to prison. Are you going to automatically disqualify them? Or are you going to find out, are you going to advocate for them? That's on you. Don't let the people, don't let a great person, slip out of your hands because of bias. Decide choosing between two equally qualified candidates based on their alignment with company values or rejecting superior candidates who do not. If someone doesn't believe or truly believe in your values, they may be the greatest coder in the world, but if they call bullshit on your values, you're going to have problems on your hands, even when the hiring manager is, agog over the person's skills. Challenge, advocating for flexible work policies despite resistance from leadership and pressure from the street. I'm sure that many people in our TA community are, you know, they know that when companies go 5 days RTO, they're going to start seeing some resignations coming up down the line and the workload's going to increase. And then they're going to have to go to recruit people to come back to the office when these people have been hybrid or remote. Put together the data and make the case and stay on it. It's on you. If enough voice is loud enough, you don't know what can happen. If you don't try, you're never going to know. Uh, Empathize, listening to a rejected candidate's feedback and using it to improve your recruitment process. And I don't mean Glassdoor and those other bitch sites. I mean someone who is rejected. Interview people after you've rejected them and ask them about the process. I know many people do this, but this is a great practice. And this will give you data that it's the kind of data that you live for, the kind of subjective, personal, human, compassionate feedback that can only make your processes better. Uh, Speaking of adapting, have you ever tried from a sourcing standpoint? I'm not looking at you, Ashley. I know you do this, but reimagining sourcing strategies without using LinkedIn. What if you told your team, okay, for the next 2 weeks, we are not going to source on the Blue Devil. We're going to do something else. The courage to communicate, informing a candidate about not being selected while preserving their respect and interest in the company. That goes hand in hand with 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 the empathizing. But that means you have to give real, tangible feedback. Brett Fogg, I think Brett's in here right now. What we did at Zip was we gave, based on the intake, we came up with the 5 absolute hardcore, no arguments. These are the 5 things that have to be there. If they're not there, I don't care. You're not getting in. but we tell people those. And we in the negative, in the disposition email, we tell them this is what we're looking for. And we say, quite matter of factly, look, you know, I just didn't see it. I didn't hear it. If by some chance you have it, but you didn't put it in your resume, I'll be happy to revisit it. And gosh darn, 97, 98% of the people who received these emails thanked us. So we had fans. I want to jump on a few of these because I'm looking at the time here. Collaborate, working closely with engineering leaders to define technical competencies and assessment rubric for new role. What Heather said, what Heather spoke about, the prompts, those prompts can be used to build a really good assessment rubric. And the whole goal of rubrics is not to get people necessarily at the same table, but to get them in the same room. And so, go back to Heather's deck when you see it. Go back to RecruitCon, Dan. It was when I did a talk on how to use prompts to create rubrics. You can't do this stuff in a vacuum. What else do we have here? Advocate for diversity. I'm pissed off about this war on DEIB, so I'm talking about a lot of diversity. Create diverse hiring panels and sourcing strategies based upon customer-based diversity data. What that means is you want some data. If you know the demographics of your customer base, tell me why your employee base isn't darn close to those same percentages. You can't. Get those two. That's the rationale for doing diversity sourcing. What else do we have here? Envision the future. Develop TA strategies that align with the rise of AI automation, but that don't impinge on humanity. I don't have a crystal ball for this, but ask yourself at every step, every workflow, ask yourself, are we preserving the humanity of the company in each step? Automation is fantastic. I graduated college in 1980. I was there when personal computers came in, when the internet came in, when Y2K problem didn't shut down the world because computers weren't sure computers could read 1904. We always find a way. Don't to maintain the human touch. There's nothing more important in job search than maintaining that human touch. So finally, look, courage is feeling fear, you're choosing to act. It's following your heart. It's persevering in the face of adversity. It's standing up for the right thing. It's letting go of things familiar. It's facing suffering with dignity. And the part about suffering with dignity, that refers to job search. It's very easy to become jaded. But you have this community. You have people like David. You have people like Chrissy. You have people like Heather. You have people like Michelle who gave just freaking fantastic advice. We're there to help you. You're never going to do this alone. You're simply not going to do it alone. So, as I say, confront your fears, take a chance, speak your mind, strive for excellence, be courageous in TA. And that is me.